This will be a whole new offering and probably tap into a market that Nike and other sports apparel companies really haven't before.
You know what the contract is?
I want to say it's $3 million a year for 8 to 10 years. It's almost $30 million, something like that.
The biggest shock here is that Nike is not only locking down Clark with a reworked deal, but they are also suing Adidas for trying to sabotage their contract after the company eventually came to the terrible realization and gave Adidas the finger with the new Caitlin Clark contract.
These leftists are idiots. Idiots. They're not about business. They're not about growing the WNBA. They're about diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is insanity, what they're doing to Caitlin Clark.
Legally speaking, it goes without saying that two rivaling titans cannot just tamper with each other's athlete roster in that way. Now, Adidas is fumbling with the argument that they only offered Clark an offer, which she declined. But let's face it, they are facing off against Nike, the biggest brand in the industry.
However, I will say that Caitlin Clark has created more buzz around the basketball landscape and has actually transformed and revived a league that was the WNBA, and she is getting paid a measly $28 million for 8 years as opposed to Wemby's 100.
It's strangely pleasant to see this conflict play out because, in the end, Nike wasn't stupid enough to allow their golden goose slip away, and, let's not forget, the internet mocked Nike for nearly making a mistake in the first place.
It's been an amusing mess all around.
WNBA season, it was announced that Caitlin Clark signed a massive endorsement deal with Nike. This deal was for 8 years, $28 million with a signature sneaker included. Now, at the time, a lot of us were...
I almost feel bad for Adidas because all they attempted to do was to take advantage of what Nike completely forgot about, and to be honest, they pretty much pulled it off. This wasn't just some idle rumors that circulate on Twitter, it was the real thing, and it came with some serious heat. Adidas threw everything they had at Caitlin Clark as if they were attempting to stage a sneaker coup or something, and people were shaken because this wasn't just a casual deal, it was a full-fledged takeover.
Nike struck absolute gold when they signed Caitlin Clark to an 8-year, $28 million endorsement deal. So why in the world? And with that, Nike has not done one thing to promote her. We have not seen any commercials, we have not seen any ads, we have not seen any Caitlin Clark merchandise, and we for sure as hell have not seen any Caitlin Clark signature.
However, this is where it becomes even more juicy. Caitlin Clark was already signed by Nike, but rather than treating her like the basketball goddess she is, they managed to ruin everything. They promised her a signature shoe and a whole collection that would be released in 2024, but in typical Nike manner, they botched the launch.
So we might not get a signature shoe from Caitlin until 2026 or 2027. I didn't mean for this video to turn into a rant, but this is just another example about how people have fumbled the gift that is.
Not just a small error either. Nay, they moved the release date to 2026 or possibly 2027. That's not merely a postponement, it's a complete contract violation in big letters.
How can you screw that up?
The praise, the commercials, the ads, the like all of the things that she should have gotten during this rookie season. Nike hasn't produced one ad or commercial featuring Clark since she turned pro, and despite a signature shoe being part of Nike's agreement with Clark,
based on conversations with people in the know, it indeed has something to do with the WNBA MVP and Nike athlete A'ja Wilson. But beyond Wilson, it's about the culture at the company that's more concerned with quelling noise rather than making it, as Nike once used to.
Their chance and wasted no time. Apparently, Nike decided that Wilson's shoe should be released first.
Why?
Because she's the MVP and, let's just say, her name doesn't have the same drama attached to it as Clark's. That's the kind of thinking going on behind the scenes, completely ignoring the fact that Clark has a horde of fans waiting to take over the internet for her shoe. If you're shocked, know that Nike didn't make this decision based solely on merit or sales potential. Instead, they moved A.A. Wilson's shoe to the front of. Despite Clark's enormous fan following, Nike believed it was a wise decision to bring her sneaker back because of a narrative in the media about playing it safe in the most absurd way imaginable. In the meantime, I would wear when Adidas noticed that Nike was taking too long. They weren't just sitting around while they ruined Caitlin Clark's shoe agreement. Adidas entered the market with ease and made Clark a huge offer that included more money and better benefits, basically what Nike ought to have done from the beginning. However, Adidas recognized
currently the best player in the WNBA? Yes. Is Caitlin Clark currently the face of the WNBA? Yes. Do I think if A'ja Wilson dropped a shoe and Caitlin Clark dropped a shoe today at the very same time, that Caitlin Clark would outsell A'ja's shoe by 100 times?
However, Adidas really outdid themselves here by giving Clark creative freedom over her own marketing plan, even as Nike was still mired in corporate red tape. Adidas went all out to give Clark the freedom that athletes rarely have. It wasn't just about wearing shoes. Clark was also given the opportunity to create her own advertisements, build her own brand, and communicate with her devoted following personally. Nike didn't anticipate it at all.
The hype that Caitlin Clark had going into this season, we will not see that again. She came off of playing in a national championship game that had over 20 million people.
And the shoe release schedule comes next. Remember how Nike insisted on releasing Clark's signature shoe later and later, from 2024 to 2025 and possibly even 2026? Adidas wasn't playing that game. They assured her of a quicker release date so her followers wouldn't have to wait a century to own her shoes. Adidas understood one simple fact: Clark's fans weren't going to sit around forever. They were ready to drop her shoe ASAP while Nike was still shuffling papers trying to figure out a launch strategy. She deserves it, she deserves it. Meanwhile, Nike, they were in full-on panic mode. They knew they were staring down a PR disaster if Clark decided to take a US's offer. Why? Because in a head-to-head shoe launch between Clark and A.A. Wilson, Clark would wipe the floor with her. Clark's fan base was on another level, and Nike knew that if both shoes dropped at the same time, Clark's would sell out in a heartbeat, leaving Wilson's gathering dust. Nike couldn't afford to let that happen, and suddenly they were scrambling to save. What did Nike do? They went into full damage control mode, trying desperately to revive the original contract they'd neglected after months of pushing Clark to the sidelines. Now they were trying to bring her show launch back on track for a 2024 release, the same date they promised her originally, but then bailed on. Suddenly they were all in on getting her shoe to market as fast as possible because they knew if they lost her to Adidas it would be a disaster for them.
She deserves it! She deserves it!
However, let's be honest for a moment. Was it too little, too late? Nike had already made a mistake, and Clark's fan base wasn't exactly pleased with how she had been treated. They had witnessed Nike sideline Clark to promote Wilson, and now that Adidas was involved, Nike was acting more like the antagonist in this tale. It wasn't just about sneakers anymore. It was about loyalty, respect, and how Nike had handled their rising star behind the scenes. Buzz really took up after Billie Jean King, an Adidas ambassador, tweeted that she was out here celebrating Caitlin Clark's accomplishments. At that point, insiders were talking about Nike's last-ditch attempt to sweeten the deal. According to rumors, Nike was throwing everything at the wall in the hopes that something would stick. They couldn't afford to lose Clark, not only because she was a baller but also because of what she stood for off the court. Losing her to Adidas would be a huge blow to Nike's reputation, especially with all the racial and social dynamics already at play. It all happened because experts were saying these things.
Winning unanimous WNBA Rookie of the Year, they've got no plans for a Caitlin Clark shoe. Why not? Well, the official reason from Nike is an obvious lie. What are they hiding? Is sports losing popularity? No, Adidas has done pretty well over that time despite ending their partnership.
There were rumors of a lawsuit, as if that weren't enough drama. On top of everything else, there was talk of a legal showdown between two of the biggest sports brands in the world. Brewing, yes, Nike wasn't just sitting around trying to fix the deal, they were also getting ready to go after Adidas legally. They were accusing Adidas of contract manipulation, essentially saying that Adidas had violated certain clauses in Clark's original Nike contract. Nike wasn't about to let Adidas swoop in and steal their athlete without a fight.
LeBron James had his own signature shoe his rookie year. So 20 years ago, Nike was nimble enough and had enough vision to see that, hey, let's get LeBron's shoe out here. This guy's going to be a big deal. They can't do this for Caitlin Clark.
Adidas made their move, and now Nike was trying to claw their way back into the market. Whether or not they could actually stop Adidas from signing Clark was still up in the air, but one thing was certain: Nike wasn't going down without a fight. If you say it wasn't that big of a deal, you should know that these huge endorsement contracts aren't just casual agreements, they are airtight. Athletes don't get to hop from one brand to another whenever they feel like it, especially when there is exclusivity. Landed a big endorsement deal with Adidas. This partnership is a huge win for women's basketball and for Clark. And guess what? Nike has that exact clause in Caitlin Clark's contract that probably states loud and clear that Clark cannot endorse any other brands, especially their biggest rival Adidas, while under contract. It's standard stuff, but Adidas apparently decided to push their luck anyhow. So what is Adidas being accused of? They are not just making vague complaints here, and they have good reason to be angry. According to rumors, Adidas has been trying to persuade Clark that she deserves more than what Nike is providing. Some rumors even speculate that Adidas may have offered her a few extra benefits to entice her. Sure, the sports war game is cutthroat, but this time, Nike claims.
The contract is? I want to say it's $3 million a year for 8 to 10 years. It's almost $30 million.
Will be a whole new offering and probably tap into a market that Nike and other sports apparel companies really haven't before. Obviously, little girls are going to wear them. I think plenty of dudes are going to wear them. You're just going to see those things in high demand.
Adidas should have known better than to tamper with that exclusivity clause in Clark's initial Nike contract, but they are allegedly using some backstage tactics to snatch Clark away. It's like watching two fighters in the ring, except one of them is acting shady and Nike is pointing the finger, but we're far past rumors. According to sources, Nike's legal team is currently working non-stop to prepare for a lawsuit against Adidas, alleging contract tampering. If that seems like a big deal, it is, as Nike's successful prosecution could upend not only the sports industry but the entire endorsement market. The world imagined two of the biggest companies vying for the attention of one of the most attractive basketball players. Things are about to get serious, and Caitlin Clark is right in the center of it.